Thank you for having us, Sam. Appreciate it.
No problem, bro.
I can imagine it's been a long week. Left Oxford City. Just talk me through what's been happening there.
So I was relieved of my duties last Thursday. Prior to that, we had the Saturday game. We beat Newmarket 3-0. So you think that you're in a better place, and the boys are in a good place. Showed a good response after losing the previous week. Then we had a midweek game and lost that. Had Wednesday off, gave the boys a day off. We was back in Thursday, took training Thursday, and unfortunately that evening I got a call from the chairman to say that I was relieved of my duty. So it's been a place where unusual for me, because I'm pretty 100 miles an hour everything that I do, and have been for a long time now. So to go from having various things going on, I was being a manager of a football club, and then going to not much. It's a different space for me, but one that I've come to terms with now, and it's just time now to reflect and just to prepare myself for what's next, really.
Yeah, before going into that, how have you coped the last few days? What have you been doing with yourself? Have you got around people? Have you been alone? Because it's such a volatile world, and as a manager, you sometimes feel so lonely. What have you been doing to just stay focused?
So on the Friday probably was the day that I was overwhelmed with messages of support. Of course, once it gets announced on social media, you get an influx of phone calls from managers, agents, players. Spoke to all my players individually and got some lovely messages from those boys that I'd signed and inherited and been working with over the last couple of months. So that was really nice, and I could take certainly a lot of positivity from that, because ultimately, when you leave somewhere and come out of an environment or anywhere in life, I think it's the legacy you leave of how you make people feel whilst you're there at the time at the club. And although we wasn't where we needed to be in the table, results weren't as what we planned. Ultimately, I think the legacy of relationships that you leave behind and the way you treat people, I think that's the most important thing. That's the way I want to be known. What I've done over the last couple of days, like I say, on the Friday I was overwhelmed with the messages and phone calls, so that pretty much consumed my day on the Friday. It was really weird because obviously I took the training on the Thursday in preparation for the FA Cup game on the Saturday. It was really quick turnaround. So the Friday, I probably had the morning of probably being in my feelings a little bit, probably down, of course, understandably. It was a bit of a shock for me, and gutted. And then I went to the gym that afternoon, and I'm a believer in God, so I had my prayers and I prayed, and it's come to the realisation with it the day after, and it's almost okay now. It sinks in. They then play the game on the Saturday in the FA Cup. It's really kicked in at that point. I got around my mates on the Saturday, went to gym with them, and I said I was going to have the weekend off to myself, saw my mum and dad, saw my family. Tried to get football off my mind, tried to not look at many results across the footballing pyramid, and I said Monday I was going to get in my diary, start planning what's next. So I just showed you up there on the screen, my plans going forward now.
You've always got a plan of action.
Yeah, I think that's important to one, for it to realise and sink in that you've been relieved of your duties, and okay, now what's next? There's no time to stand still and feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, I know your drive because I've known you. I've played with you. Former teammate, academy graduates at Tottenham Hotspurs. But I also know, within the community, everybody loves you.
Thank you.
And among your friends, always great shouts about you. Amazing guy. What anchors you? I know you're a man of faith. How important is that to you? Because I can see it's only been a week, but you've already got a plan of action.
Yeah.
And you're very well anchored whenever I meet up with you.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your faith a little bit.
Certainly, my foundation in Christ and God has been my fallback. To be honest, when I'm going through hard times, when I go through difficulties, and when I go through challenges and adversity, I think the true test of faith is within those times. And I think if I didn't have that cornerstone and belief in God, always having a plan for me, everything always coming to pass, and everything working out for the best. I think even in some of my most difficult situations in the moment, and I think the human instinct is why is it happening, but you know, God has been so good to me in my life and the people that I've met, the experiences that I've been on, and I think it's true test of faith when you're going through those difficulties, still coming out praising God and thanking Him for those hard times, because at the end of the day He's moulding us during those hard times, and He's helping us come out a better person. And I know through this whole experience, you know, albeit, you know, a short stint as manager at Oxford, I've certainly learnt an awful lot. So I come out of it thanking God for the tough times, thanking God for the losses, thanking God for those, you know, those moments where I didn't know what was next, but you know, I've put my full trust in Him. And I think a lot of my upbringing from my mum and dad obviously taught me, you know, never to get too down, never to get too high when things are going well.
Explore that a little bit, because I've known you for a long time. Obviously you've got the family side, but also you came through the academy at Tottenham. How did that coincide with your belief system and the way you've grown up to be?
Yeah, mum and dad have been top for me, and you've met my mum and dad, and I think probably my route into football was a little different. You know, I came into Tottenham quite late, as you know, under 15, I think I got signed. I was a young 14-year-old, which was quite late, to be fair.
In the academy system.
Exactly,
yeah,
in the academy system. But my mum and dad always had me grounded and education first. Make sure you concentrate in school first. Yeah, they pushed me in football. My dad was my first coach, so you know it was always good to have a positive influence, someone that loved football like your dad. You know, he took me everywhere. I had a season ticket at Arsenal, so you know I was brought up around football. But the foundation of working hard and everything that I do. Not the most talented footballer, but I think probably what I lacked in talent, I probably made up through attitude and application, working hard, and those kind of attributes that were installed into me through my mum and dad. And yeah, they've always said to me from early that you can only do as much as you can. You can only give 100%. Give 100% in everything. You can look back with no regrets. And I think anything that I do, whether it be management, coaching, playing, anything I do in life is always, I try 100%, and if I fall short, then you know at least I can say I gave everything.
I've known that about you this whole time. You've always been a fighter, a great character in the changing room, and going through that system and then beyond, you then started playing in the leagues. Talk to us about that sort of experience, the ups and downs. We both know how volatile the game is, but people from the outside don't necessarily know.
Oh, it's crazy.
Again, that must have impacted you. Talk to us about that journey.
Yeah, so, you know, coming off the back of going late into the academy system at Spurs, we had an unbelievable age group. You know, yourself, Ryan Mason, Andrew Townsend, Smithy.
If you look back at it, it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
2 years, the two age groups.
The age group, so the year above us and the year below, it was freak, really.
We've got Champions League players,
internationals, Premier League players still playing in the Premier League at 33, 34. But you look pretty much at that cohort of players. Most went on to have a league career or a career in football, which you know is for the 0.092 whatever the statistic is an anomaly. And I think you know we pushed each other every day to super competitive. It was relentless on the training pitch, off the pitch as well, like doing it properly with the injury prevention and living the lifestyle right. I think those principles were installed in us because we had such good coaches, and we pushed each other. I think we were also our own best coaches too. You know, people talk about what the coaches gave to us, but what we gave to each other was, like you say, the competition, the ruthlessness in training. We pushed each other to be the best that we could. But you know, from that, you go to the career and get to the business side of things. Really, you become a pro, and then you're in the real world.
And how different was that, stepping away and then going?
So different, because we were taught at the top at Spurs, and I think we were probably ahead of the times in terms of what we were doing at the club. I think, and the coaches again going back. We had Ricardo Moniz, we had the skills coach that was in, technical coach. We had John McDermott, who obviously he's done what he's done, probably the best developer in the country that we've seen over the last however many years. You've got Alex Inglethorpe, who's now academy director at Liverpool, and to add on to that, you had Damien Comoli, recruitment at the time, and Richard Allen, that were bringing in the best young players in Europe to already add on to what already existed at the club and the talented players, pool of players that we had. So I think you have that recipe of top coaches, top players, top recruiters, adding the best players from Europe and around the world into this squad, and then ultimately you get products like Harry Kane that go on to be the country's all-time top scorer, etc. So
they also bring certain characters like Chris Ramsey. They brought him around.
Chris Ramsey,
he's looked after us.
Again, the best. Chris Ramsey was he signed me, and I owe an awful lot to Chris, and what he's done in the development world for young players is ridiculous. He's produced so many players, and nobody has a bad word to say about Chris. Bradley Allen, the young developer of young players, and I've still got a fantastic relationship with him now. You get to the business side of things and you end up coming away from the Tottenham environment, and because we had that recipe of eliteness, you come out of that environment now. And my first loan was at Cheltenham Town with Martin Allen. We was in a relegation battle and bottom of the league near enough. And you get thrown into that environment, which is completely different training environment, different world to what we've been taught for the last 6 years. And you have to adapt. I was like a little skinny midfielder that wanted to get on the ball, even though I was a rat and dogged, but wanted to get on the ball, get the ball from the goalkeeper, tried to play through the thirds. And then I remember my first session, Martin Allen stopped the session and he said, "Coxie, don't you dare get on the ball again. You get up there, you get a second ball." I was thinking, what is going on here, man? What have Spurs put me into? But
one of those show to the centre back, but it's gone low, and you go. It's a 60-yard diag, and you got to run.
You got to run 40 yards to get to the second ball.
It's like I just showed you.
No, but he actually told me not to get the ball from the goalkeeper or the centre half. So it was like, I don't know where to sit. You have to find your pitch. It's a complete different.
It's a different world.
You have to learn all over again, and I think where you've gone from an environment where you're like obviously trying to play out and trying to get on the ball, and then you have your whole pitch geography. Where am I standing? Where do I go? Like, the ball's going long up there into the corner. I've got to be 30 yards up the pitch, but I'm not occupying the middle of the pitch. Now I'm playing in a midfield too. I've got to be up there picking up the second balls, making sure that I stay locked in, and it's a completely different game. So you have to relearn and adapt. Otherwise, I wasn't ready. I played the one game and then went back.
It's a bit like what I say is coming away from a big corporate structure where the processes and the refinement is great, and that's what we had at Spurs. And then you go to a startup and everybody's hot desking with their laptop, sending emails. It feels like that when you go on that sort of loan journey and you go, what's going on here? I've been learning certain styles, certain tactics, certain mannerisms, being around certain characters, and this is totally different. And dare I say, you also have to get lucky with that a little bit.
Of course.
Of
course. And you think, I went to Cheltenham, you had Andros, John Abika, Ryan Mason and Stephen Corker all at Yeovil together.
Yeah.
And it worked really well for them. There was 4 of them there, and they gelled, because we had that, upbringing through the academy. So they all knew each other's game. It was in a successful team, had a good manager, wanted to play. So it worked. Other loans, I think, you only have to look at Harry Kane's loans, for example. Harry went to, Orient, was in and out. Norwich didn't really play. Leicester didn't really play. So you do have to have that bit of luck on the way as well. Even though Harry came out, but got his opportunity in first team and done what he done. But I think, when you go on loan, things have to click. And that's like anything in football. You go anywhere and it has to click. Click with the manager, click with your teammates, right style, manager connecting with you on a human level. There's so many things that need to come together.
Then what was your walk? What was your mental picture going through that? If you look back, what were you thinking? What were you doing? Or were you just like me a little bit learning on the day?
Yeah, it was learning. It was learning on the go.
Yeah.
It was learning on the go for me. It's not like I was still working at my hardest. You know, I'd still stay out and do my extras, still working on my technical. All I knew in my head is, I remember what Alex Inglethorpe would tell me. He said, don't get sucked into coming away from what you learnt at Tottenham, because it's quite easily you could go into a lower, lesser environment, try to adapt, and then lose your identity as a player. And you know, I think in those early years I was so concerned about not losing my identity, I probably didn't do enough to adapt to solidify myself in that environment. Well, you know, when I did get released from Spurs and then I signed at Barnet, I had to adapt.
Yeah.
Ended up, you know, my stint in League Two before dropping into non-league, and I look at those couple of years, I probably went the complete opposite way then, where I tried to adapt so much, I lost my identity. What I learned, I suppose, getting the ball from the goalkeeper, trying to play through the thirds and trying to do it the right way in terms of footballing style that we were brought up on. And almost you go down into those levels, you almost become like what's already there. So I'm now a second ball player. I'm now a rat in midfield that doesn't really make any shorter passes. It's almost stick it in the channel, get off the seconds, win your tackles, win your 50-50s, and you know, before you know it, you're 23, 24 years old, and you know, it's difficult then to get back into the Football League.
But you always had that thinking mind, and was that sort of the start of your coaching career?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, it was, because you know you get an idea of different strategies and styles. You know, I've had the Tottenham upbringing, but now it's okay. There is also other ways to win football matches, and you have to adapt. So, you know, it's there's not one way to, you know, win a game. It could be like playing long, it could be playing short, playing off seconds, or playing through the first. There's all different ways, and I think, you know.
Were you sitting down and thinking about this in the change room at this point?
I think, you know, after I left Spurs, and I think with all the coaching that I'd do extras with the boys after training. So I would take like 5-6 players after training, and we'd do extras, and I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, you stand here, we're going to do an A to B passing practice, or we're going to do passing practice into 1v1s, or we're going to do whatever, crossing and finishing. But I would always take 5 or 6 players after training, still trying to improve my game. But I didn't know then, but I was actually starting my coaching journey then. So all the stuff that I'd learnt from Spurs, I was taking that into Barnet, into when I went on loan to Torquay, to Cheltenham, and then dropping into non-league, Hazelhead and Boreham Wood. I was taking those players and I was doing bits with them after training. I didn't realise then, I just thought, I'm going to improve myself. But I'm actually my early foundations of coaching. That's where it started.
And from there, and that's just amazing to hear, because not a lot of players do that. I didn't do that. I was so concentrated on the game itself that sometimes you get into your own head and you don't do those little extra bits. And to put you in good stead to your next step, did you from there go back and start coaching at Tottenham, or how did?
Yeah, so it was when I came out of Barnet, and then you know, you're in a place you come out of Barnet League 2 relegation scrap for 2 years. There's only one place you're going, you're dropping into non-league. I wasn't getting another Football League club. I tried, offered a few trials, but you know, nothing concrete in contract. And then one of my old coaches, Naz Bashir, who came in temporarily at Spurs, I don't know if you remember, Naz came in for a couple of weeks off the back of leaving Reading. He knew me from there, knew Alex and John, and he said, come and sign with me at Hazelhead. You know, it's not the level you want to be at, but I'll get you back playing in the Football League. And he offered me a great deal. Became the club's youngest captain, and I really enjoyed my football, to be very, tried to do it the right way. But yeah, no, it was in a situation where I'd gone from a full-time environment and then part-time. Well, now I kind of need to find something else. I had all this time during the day, we trained in the evenings. What am I doing with my time? So there's only so much, you know, you could do your extras, go over the park and everything, but I need to earn a bit more money. And you know, I was always in, you know, close contact with John Mack at Spurs, and he said, come down, you know, come into the club, come and watch the 18s, come get round it, come and train, come and do a bit of coaching. So I used to just go down into Tottenham, and John used to bring me in. I used to observe, used to watch, and watch Chris Ramsey, watch John, watch Alex. And at the end of that year, I'd done like a year voluntary, and John said, you should go into Tottenham Foundation. I said, what's a foundation? Oh, it's like going into schools, going into the community. I said, John, I don't want to do that. If I want to coach, I want to go straight into the academy. I want to do under 18s, I want to do 16s. He's like, Coxie, it doesn't work like that. He said, you need to go back and learn from the bottom upwards. You need to work with different abilities, different talents, different people. And he said, I want you to go into the foundation. So that was going into Enfield, Tottenham, Edmonton, going into schools, going into estates, and all of this. So sometimes I was given 2 footballs to do a session with 40 kids, work with all different abilities to blindness, autism, brain damaged, wheelchaired. Yeah. All different kinds of abilities, and you have to try and figure out ways to have outcomes in that session to make sure one, they're getting something out of it and they're having fun too. So I did 7, 8 years of working in the foundation, and John Mack was so big on that. He said, if you don't learn it there, you ain't going to learn it at the top.
It's a totally different world, right? Totally different world from playing to then coaching.
Yeah.
And being a leader without being on the pitch, being on the sidelines.
Yeah.
I remember doing my first session, one of my first sessions in Sweden, and they don't really have academies over there, so I turned up to some forest, the most beautiful forest, and they had like 30 kids in the changing room. I was thinking,
what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's mad. But bro, I at the time I was thinking, what am I doing here? I remember my first session, it was a school over Enfield, an SEN school, and it was autism, wheelchair, blind, really bad disabilities. And I thought to myself, how a couple of years ago, I was at White Hart Lane, like against Shakhtar Donetsk in the UEFA Cup, like on the bench, sitting next to Gareth Bale and Giovanni Dos Santos, and now I'm.
How do you plan out that session as well?
I was like a fish out of water, man. I did not know what I was doing, but we almost got thrown in. I had no experience of coaching, let alone disabilities, and it was like. Yeah, what are you planning for the head of PE? Said, okay, what are you planning for the kids today? I said, I don't know, mate. I said, do you know what? You take the session today. I just want to observe.
Yeah, that's always a good one.
Yeah, so
you take the lead on that.
So that's all I did at the start. I said, no, we're coming to observe first couple of weeks, and then so if the child was in a wheelchair, put the football on the lap and go in and out of cones and. Throw the ball into the goal. Little outcomes like that, and they still leave with a smile. And I got better and better and better, and learned how to speak to the kids, learned how to communicate, learned how to get a reaction out of them. And I look back at those early days of coaching, and again, I said at the start about being thankful to God. I'm certainly thankful for those moments where I did not know where my journey was going, but that foundation that John said, go and do this, start at the bottom. Work with all different types of abilities, all different characters, kids, all the way up, and I'm so grateful for him for putting me through that. One, it helps me become a better communicator, a better coach, how to deal with different scenarios. If I was given 2 footballs to work with 30 kids, how do I deal with it? You find different outcomes, and certainly now, even in my last stint at Oxford, just now, player might come in and say, my calf's hurting, or one person might not turn up because he's got a family issue or something. Now I've got to adapt a session where I'll plan for 16 players. Now I've got to automatically, within an hour, half an hour, come up with a session that's adaptable for 13 players. I know it sounds easy, but you have to change a lot of things about. But I think if I didn't have that foundation of coaching at the bottom with those kids in the schools, in the communities, in the estates, disabilities, I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, that growth is super important. That growth is super important because when you're moving into something that's super professional, Tottenham's academy, and then you're thrown a curveball, you handle it a little bit better.
Definitely.
Do you feel you were a little bit more ready, a bit more at ease once you got into the academy? What age group did you start coaching then?
I started, off the back of doing a year with the foundation, so I did it my first year, and then John Mack said, okay, still come in and do your Voluntary work, I want you around the 16s now.
Yeah.
So I got round Justin Cochran, who I played with at Bournemouth. He's now assistant at Brentford first team, top coach, top man. Got round him, got round Kieran McKenna, who's now obviously gaffer at Ipswich. Learned an awful lot for them in the 16s, 15s. Hugo Ehiog at the time. I was working with Hugo and learned a lot from these guys, working with 16s, 15s, youth development phase, and then off the back of my first year in the foundation, I got given the under 9s. So again, still starting at the bottom. So took the under 9s, and I loved it. I thoroughly love working with these kids. Again, I think because I'd worked in the schools, knew how to deal with younger people, and asking them for me to do their shoelace and crying when things don't go right, and working with those boys. But top age group, those boys are actually, fun enough, I went on to work with them for a year, worked with them at 14s, 15s and 16s, and now they're scholars. So I was very privileged to go on a journey with that under 9s group, and now they're first year scholars and some of them pros. So that was brilliant. But while I was doing that, I was still doing the foundation, and then worked with the 9s. I got moved up to the 11s, and then for 5 years I think I'd done the 15s with Bradley Allen. Then I got the 14s, led the 14s with Anton Blackwood, and then went back to the 15s with Tony Tilbrook. And now off the back of that I got the Oxford job. So I've been on a journey. I think I've done 10 years working in the academy.
And that development through the academy, what do you see with the different age groups? How do you see it work out, and how are you developing personally?
Yeah.
Because now you're a big club.
It's for me, again, going back to my roots of coaching, you do the schools and you do the under 9s, which is predominantly working on core skills and technique. It was all about 1v1s, getting the better of your man, in and out of possession, finding different, ideas and variables, how to beat your man and how to get the better of him defensively. And you learn those core skills and core principles of coaching, technical. Then you go to the 11s, it's still heavily based around the individual technical, but then you move up to the 15s and it becomes more about, okay, now can you deal with the tactical side of things, start adding a bit of methodology and more ways to play with your teammates, etc. And that's how it was at Spurs. And John Mack was been brilliant at setting that, and then obviously Simon Davies has come in now and taken that over and added his experience that he's inherited from Man City and stuff. So the difference of working in the foundation, working in the foundation phase, working in the youth development phase, you get a rounded scope of what that kid needs.
And are they throwing in various formations by now towards closer to the scholar years? 15, 16?
Not so much different formations. Before Simon, came in, there was he was able to tweak around with bits and bobs. But now, we stick with the structure, stick with the principles. The club stick with the principles, and you're still able to give the players what they need within that framework as such. So I don't believe so much that it's about changing formations at that age. Again, I think it has to be a development of the individual and what that player needs. As you know, in your schoolboy age groups, I think that's the most important thing, because you can't get to under 18s and be inept with your technical ability and in the basics. And I do think you can't deviate away from that and go too tactical heavy or go too formation heavy or whatever. I still think in those schoolboy age groups especially, it's got to be about what that player needs to prepare him for full-time football as a scholar, as a pro, and that's we got that when we was younger. I think that's the most important thing.
I agree, and you took, normally you would take maybe the under 18s, maybe the reserves. You took a bit of a different route. You've jumped in straight into first team duties. Where did you go from there? I remember you being at Wenning. I came down, played for a little bit with you. I even said, actually, at one point I think we were playing Bath away, and I looked on the sideline and I said, "Oh, that's Sam. He's going to be a manager very soon," because I could see that sort of vision. Talking about your first team endeavours.
Again, it's
as a coach.
Again, it's almost like my natural progression took me there. not through my want, but through just almost destined to do it. I feel because my journey in football, dropping out of the Football League, having to fend for myself, get another job, didn't particularly want to be a coach, but that's the way my path led me. And it's the same with management. I was happy playing, balancing my coaching career at Spurs, and also playing in National League South, on a part-time basis. So I was getting the balance of both.
Were you doing internationals then as well?
Still doing international as well.
Yeah.
And I was getting to a stage in my career where contracts weren't as good. I weren't getting the money that I was before, and I was getting frustrated. I got frustrated with a lot of managers that I was playing under, probably because I was developing a lot in my coaching and developing my own philosophy and identifying things that I didn't particularly agree with and the standards that I'd inherited from Spurs. So there was, I did have, frustrations over the last couple of years with the managers that I played under, and got an opportunity at Welling United to be a player assistant manager, and I took that, and that's obviously where I reconnected with you, and that was my first gig, senior football, like coaching. I was, as you know, I took training and obviously working with Warren, I was up on the sides, and even though I play a little bit, and I think my bread and butter was the coaching side of things, and I got a taste for that, and like you say, I didn't do 18s at Spurs, I didn't do 21s, but I knew my route into a first team environment would look a little bit different. It would look different to a Ryan Mason, for example, or a Matty Wells who's up in the first team now. I knew that I have to try and go a different route to get to where I need and want to be. So I took the Welling job, and then off the back of that, I've done a year at Welling, as you know, and I ended up at Wealdstone.
Was that a relief though? Because a lot of people are going to go through this, and I've been going through that sort of transitional period. What did it feel like while you were going through it? Doing internationals, playing in the league, non-league, coaching. Life is hitting you, responsibilities, growing up, and then you're starting to think, hey, hold on a second, maybe I could take this session and do this a bit better. I've got this philosophy. Yeah. This is what I've grown with.
It's really hard. It's hard to reflect. You make a good point, because I think from the ages of from 24 to 31, I've been non-stop. Like I said at the start of the interview, I've been 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It has literally been 100 miles, and everybody has, there's so many people that are working so hard, and I'm not saying that I'm working harder than anyone or anything like that, but my days were packed out. If I told you, I would go to my first school with the foundation, go to a school, I'd be in that school till lunchtime, and I'd leave at lunch, and I'd have to drive to another school. Once I'd finished with that school, I'd have to drive as quick as I can to get down to the academy for 5 o'clock. So I'd get down to the academy 5 o'clock, I'd take the session, come out of there at 7:30, and that was leaving early. You have to be there until 8 o'clock, 8:30. I was, Bradley Allen would say, go on, get off, and the coaches were always understanding. They said, get off, and I'd then have to drive all the way down to Hampton and Richmond from Spurs. So I'd do the academy boys, then I'd drive all the way down, do an hour drive to Hampton. I'd be late for the warm-up, so I was having to catch up on the warm-up. My body had been sitting in the car for an hour. I was stiff, having to coach, having to train to the best of my ability to make sure I was in the team for the Saturday. And then off the back of that, drive home, prepare my sessions for the morning for the schools, and that was like on repeat. And then in between that, getting called up internationally, and then it's non-stop. Like my days are 100 miles an hour, and there's not much time to actually reflect, and which I've found that is the most important thing with coaching. Where could you have done better? What more could you have done? How can I improve? You're almost doing everything on the go, and it's just like a hamster wheel. It just goes, and you don't really think too much. You're just doing, and it's definitely taught me so many things, and made me become more resilient and capable of taking on that workload and demand. But then you get to a point now where I've come out of this manager's job. I'm not a Spurs officially anymore. I have got my Sam Cox Academy, which I do the private work and that. But I'm in a place where this is the least I've done probably since the age of since I can remember. This is at least I've had. Even in school, like even you go to school, you
don't take that away as well. What a weird thing was when I was sending an email out when I was thinking about going down the software route, and it was the software developer. I messaged him and said, "Hey, I want to connect. I'm thinking about doing a bit of coding, building a few programs online." And he messaged back. He said, "Oh, I've just looked up. Oh, what an amazing 20 years you've had." It's been more than 20 years in the game, because you got to look at the first contract I signed was at 11 years of age.
Yeah.
And you were just talking about one leg of the journey.
Yeah.
The other journey that you were going to come upon was going into the academy, going to school, training in the evening, also doing your own sessions in the afternoon and evening, and on the weekends playing games. So.
And trying to fit a social life around that as well.
Oh, we didn't have that when we were kids. In bed by 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock on a Friday for a Saturday game. It's crazy. So you've gone through all that, and now you've gone into the first team. You coaching. Did you already have a philosophy in mind, or were you still working on it at Welling?
At Welling,
yes.
So Welling was different because I was assistant manager at Welling. I think I knew what I wanted for a team, and I think, it's hard when you're an assistant, and I've learnt this obviously the last two previous to the Oxford and taking over at Wilstone on an interim basis. I was an assistant and have been for my national team as well. You have to compromise your philosophy and your ideas and methodology for what the manager wants. Ultimately, you are the assistant, so you listen to what he wants. So you then have to adapt. Warren at Welling. My good friend now. I love Warren. He gave me an opportunity. The way he wanted us to play was probably different to the way that I wanted to play, but he had his philosophy, and I had to adapt. So if I was putting on practice, I had to put on practice that suited the style that he wanted. So you adapt. Again, it makes you a better coach and a better person. So it's not until you have your time to be in charge that you have time to put over your philosophy and methods, because until then you have to compromise and listen to what the gaffer wants.
What other parts were growing then? Because we know an assistant is almost a gateway between the manager and the players and the changing room.
Yeah.
How did you find that? How did you find being that sort of middleman?
I thought it was probably a natural progression. I've been captain at every club that I've been at, so really you yourself being a captain, you're kind of that mediator between staff and changing room, and I felt that was the natural progression at Welling as well. But the only difference was you're not in the boys' changing room anymore. So I actually got signed initially at Welling as a player alone. It was when after the pre-season, got to the end of the pre-season, Gaffer actually said to me, we don't have the budget to be giving you the money that we've offered you, so we're going to have to let you go. And I said, I don't want to go. I said, I want to stay here. I said, I offer more than just being a player. He said, okay, I'll give you a call later on. He phoned me up and said, do you want to be my assistant manager? I said, sure. So literally I went from the Tuesday coming in as a player, getting ready for the first game of the season, and then on the Thursday, I'm not wearing the black kit, I'm wearing the white coach's kit. I'm not in the players' dressing room anymore, I'm now in the staff dressing room. So that was the biggest change for me. You have to completely detach yourself from, you're not a player and you're actually in a position of authority, you're a staff.
You had to make that call. What was that call like?
What, when he phoned me up?
Yeah, you didn't want to leave. You didn't want
I did want to leave. I told him, I said, I don't want to go. I said, I enjoy it here. I think I can add value, and I think Warren respected that, and we've got a great relationship now. I still speak to him most weeks, and he said to me, yeah, I'd love for you to be my assistant. Colin West had moved on. I think he went to Blackpool, so there was no assistant at the time. He said, come be my assistant.
Yeah.
I took a pay cut, half my money, to do double the work.
Yeah.
And
not many people know that when you're a coach, it's not quite like a player.
No, people don't know.
You're not in the building at 9 and leaving by 1.
The deal at Welling initially, Howard, the chairman, put an awful lot of money into it, and I was offered a really good deal. There's players on really good money, and for the National League South Step 2, it was some good money, and I was on a really good deal. It was a non-contract. I hadn't signed the deal, so what they did, they He said, if you want to stay, your money's going to have to be halved. My money did get halved, but I was still at the club, and I was, again, the workload of coaching, playing, doing everything I was doing outside of the building as well. It was tough, but I've said this, for me, it's of course you have to be looked after financially, but for me it's the opportunity now to put my skill set into a first team environment, and I knew it was an opportunity for me. But the biggest thing was separating myself from players' dressing room, then going from staff. But I'm a people person, so I love all the boys. I'll jump in there. I'd envy that. I miss that. I miss being in the
I remember we were having banter in the change room.
I know.
And I put someone's flip flops and took a picture of it. And you came in and they were taking the mickey out of me. And I could see you'd miss that. And that is the camaraderie. That's what we're always going to miss. You don't find that in a normal workplace.
No,
really.
you don't. You don't get the
change room.
And I feel like when you're in a position of authority, and you know you can't, you have to detach yourself from that. Although I'm never going to detach myself completely because I'm a people person. But
you have. I can see that. Yeah. And you've grown from that period, and you went on to where after that?
Wilstone.
Yeah. It was straight away, and you became assistant there.
Yeah. So left Welling. Gaffer left. So I came out of that, and I didn't have a club. This is the first. Well, to be fair, there were so many times in pre-season I didn't do a pre-season. I'd wait for the right deal or the right club, and nothing. I was getting no sniffs. A couple of clubs in step 3 were saying, "Come and play. We'll give you this money, that money," and I had no enthusiasm. It was the first time in my career where I had no enthusiasm to go and play straight away. I didn't want to go and drop to a club that I knew that wasn't going to enjoy, because I knew if I went to that club that would be the end. That would probably be my last year, and then end up retiring, which I didn't want to do. So I was more than happy to wait. And
what were you doing in that time? Sam Cox Academy?
Sam Cox Academy, coaching the Spurs, and training myself, staying fit for when the opportunity came. Fortunately, the national team, they was, I've done that for 10 years, and
it's one of the toughest places to be mentally.
Mentally, so tough.
What gets you through that?
Yeah, I think, for me it was knowing that something better was going to come and something was going to change. But, you go from month to month and you're like, okay, when's this better going to come? When's this change going to happen? And it got to Christmas, I had no club. I had no club and didn't know where my route was going. And then I remember I went to Hendon versus Hayes and Yedding. I was going to sign at Hayes and Yedding, re-sign back with Mark Mosley. It was step 3, and I always said to myself I didn't want to play anything lower than national 1 and 2. And I was going to sign at Hayes and Yedding, and for one reason or the other, the deal didn't happen. I remember I was outside Hotspur Way. I just finished with the kids, and I rang up Mark. I said, "So I'm coming down to train today. I haven't heard from him." He's like, "Oh no, we saw." Something went out on Twitter that you were still looking for a club, so we've gone for someone else. I said, that wasn't me that put that tweet out. I didn't do it. They decided not to sign me, so I'm thinking, blimey, I can't even get a step 3 club now to play. On the way home back, I had a call from Rory Fitzgerald, the Wealdstone chairman. He said, "Sam, how are you? What are you up to?" I said, "I've just left Spurs." But I was going to sign and go and play at Hayes, but it hasn't worked out. I'm still free. I said I'm still free, and he said, Stuart Maynard's just gone to Notts County. We've had to let him go. Notts County have come in for him. He said, "I don't know what capacity, whether manager, whether assistant, whether player, want you back at the club." In my head, I'm thinking,
one door opens, the window opens, get that ladder.
I said, I will do whatever it is. I said, I would love to come back. I'd love to come and work for you. Love to be back at the club. Played there, captained them. I love the fans, love the club.
And you kept them up. Eventually, what happened was the manager left, and they were having a relegation fight.
Yeah.
And you became interim manager.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I came and watched the games. You galvanized the squad, the arena, the stadium. I loved it, and I saw you in action, and you stayed up. You didn't stay with Wealdstone, and eventually you moved on to New Pastures, Oxford City. Now we know what's happened, so talk us through that. What happened? How did you find the deal? How did you find the atmosphere there?
So,
The journey.
you know, obviously I was very grateful for Rory for bringing me back to Wealdstone, and, you know, firstly grateful for Nobby for having me as his an assistant, and unfortunately got sacked. I took over at Wealdstone, managed to survive relegation, which was fantastic for everyone at the club, and it was a real collective effort. It wasn't just me, it was, you know, everyone coming together, and I'm very grateful for that. And, you know, disappointed not to get the job on a full-time basis. You know, the chairman decided to bring in Matty Taylor, said he wanted more experience, he had EFL experience, I didn't. So I was, again, gutted, disappointment. It's been a theme of football, and, you know, that's how it is. Had that disappointment, and it was a case then now of either sitting back, waiting for the right move, or taking maybe an offer that came up initially. And, you know, one of those, I got a call from the Oxford chairman, said, we'd like you to do an interview. And I was out in Guyana at the time. I did the interview out in Guyana online, did 2 interviews. And you know, it was a thorough process, really thorough. I had to do a real in-depth presentation of philosophy, recruitment.
And you're coaching Guyana at this point.
Guyana at this point as well. So I'm doing this on my break. You know, in Guyana, we finished training. I got back. You know, put smart clothes on. Did my.
Are you heading off to a conference room or in a hotel?
In a hotel room.
Yeah,
I did it in a hotel room. You know, I had my analysis and assistant Liam Babcock out there, so he put something together for me on the laptop, and, you know, I presented it. Yeah. Off the back of those 2 interviews, I ended up getting the job, and you know, it was, you know, I went into the club when I finished international and I signed the deal. Fantastic little club, not the biggest supported club, because you've got Oxford United down the road. We were playing in the Championship, so it's a very family orientated club. Not very well, you know, they don't have loads of fans. The fans that they're very loyal, but they don't have loads.
Yeah.
Everything looked really good. I knew there was challenges going into it. I knew it was a step below the National League. I knew we were in the National League North, and we're the most southern club.
A team that had just come down.
A team that had just been relegated. So there was all these factors that I knew that were going to be a challenge, but I either had the decision to make to either, no, it's not the right thing, I'm going to wait for the exact right thing, or I'm going to jump on this, prove my worth, show what I can do, hit it whilst my name's still hot off the camp, coming off the back of Wealdstone. I'm going to give it a real go. And I made that decision to give it a real go, and I was head down, foot to the pedal, 100% committed. And were there challenges? 100%. You know, I think, you know, a lot of those challenges that I just mentioned, they were evident and probably part of the reason why I've come out. And, you know, I have to look back and reflect where I could have done better, whether it be recruitment, whether it be style. I don't compromise on my principles. I remain in my principles, how I want teams to play, in and out of possession. There may be small tweaks in formation or system, but the principles, what I want in and out of possession, they remain. Maybe I could have tweaked it a little more or gave less information, but I think the players, I think they bought into it. I just think probably, you know, in hindsight, they needed more time. Unfortunately, didn't get that time. That's football. The decision was made by the chairman, like I explained at the start of the interview, to bring the former manager back, Ross Jenkins, who was the manager before me, and he was always the first choice. He was the first choice for the club, but he decided to move on to Bournemouth. And then when he became available, got sacked from Bournemouth, I knew it was going to be tough.
Yeah, it's almost that poison pill that you take to become a manager. You want to implement your style, your philosophy, but you don't have the time.
Yeah.
And football, again, it's such a volatile world. It's a week-to-week thing and moment-to-moment. What can you take from this and go forward with from what you've said has happened at Oxford and the first team environments, including Guyana, which you'll be going off soon for international
next
break.
week? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is great for you, right? You're just wanting to get back into it. I know you. But what will you take from this? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so much. You know, I got in my diary for a couple of hours yesterday, just writing down things I could have done better, writing down things that that I think went well. What can I take from it? An awful lot. I think I've probably learnt more in that, 3-4 months of being at Oxford than I have done my whole career. Relationship with chairman, relationship with directors and people in authority. I think that is key. Being around the building as much as possible.
building those relationships, communication with the players. You know, one thing I've learned is, you know, those players, I feel like there was a mutual respect, and, you know, certainly going to take the positives out of that. That was one of the positive sides. I've made some great friends at the club, very blessed to have had that experience. But I think in the short stint, you have to do what you have to do to get the team into a winning mindset. Mindset is the biggest thing. So relationship with chairman, you have to keep that at a premium, because ultimately he's the man that gives you the job and kicks you in the job. What else have I learned? So many things. Recruitment, there has to be a thorough process in terms of recruitment of players that you're bringing into a group, especially a group that had been relegated and need uplifting. The players that you then bring into the group, they've got to be making sure that they are the right characters. And, you know, I do feel we have some really good people at the club, but, you know, finding out, you know, budget restraints, you know, how, you know, people operate, in terms of giving the green light for stuff in and around the club. There's loads of factors. I think the biggest take-homes would be, you know, trying to adapt, not compromise your principles, but trying to adapt maybe a style that, you know, in the short term might help the group. Making sure pre-season fixtures are right. There's so many things I can go on, making sure you've got the right staff around you. I've taken so much out of this experience, and I'm so grateful for it, and I know I'm more determined than ever wherever I go after this little break I'm going to have. I know that I'll get it right, and I've got full confidence in myself still, no matter, you know, this didn't work out. I know it is going to work out eventually. It might not be the next one, it might not be the one after that, but I know I'm confident and crystal in my identity and principles and the way I'm with people, that I'll be able to have a successful career in this. And if not, then, you know, I reassess and I find out what's next best for me. But I'm always confident in myself.
And that's amazing. And that's amazing to hear. And also your personality, how driven it is, how goal-orientated it is. I saw that because we spoke on Sunday. And one of the first things you said, I got to get out there and keep learning and go see other coaches. And we're going to do that as well. I love learning about football as much as the next guy, but I'm not necessarily going to go and become a manager. But you've already said, hey, let's drive up to Scotland. Let's see one of our former teammates, John Obika. I was with Luke Williams at Swansea just the other day. We can go watch one of their games, training sessions. So, you know, that speaks a lot. That speaks volumes of you. But I do want to just talk about, there's a recurring theme throughout all of this, you know. As much as we like to say there's a lot of banter, there's a lot of camaraderie in the changing room, it is a lonely place. As a player,
that's what that was. What I was going to say. That is the biggest thing. Management is a lonely place, man. It is a lonely place. I can't tell you. You know, no matter what anybody says, you can't prepare you for the experience of being a first team manager. And even, you know, people say, oh, it's, you know, National League Step 2, National League North. Pressure is just the same. You know, we lose a game of football, I'm coming home, I'm not sleeping, you know, watching games back. What could I have done better? What could the team have done better? Overanalyzing. You know, you're ultimately at the forefront to take the criticism, no matter how the team are and individuals are on the pitch. It's the manager. You're the one that picks a team. You're the one that puts a team out there. You're the one that's going to take the bullets at the end of the day. And, you know, you don't really have a social life. You come back home after the game. If you lose, you're back, you're watching it on the telly, and you're, okay, what am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing Monday? How are we going to prepare for the next game? It is relentless. So I think the biggest take home is probably understanding that you're going to go into a lonely place. You're going to be isolated from so many things and people in your life, but it is relentless, and you've got to do it. And this is a career that I'm looking to pursue, and, you know, that's the way it is. But, you know, I'm confident, like I say. But you're right, spot on. That's the one I wanted to get out.
Yeah, no, I got that. I remember talking to John McDermott. He was our academy director back in Tottenham, and he pulled me in, as he does, because he had that door that we walk in the corridor, and it's like, okay, John might pull you in, and you see in the corner of your eyes, come, Yasser. And he said, in football, there's going to be more lows than highs. And I've always remembered that.
Yeah.
And so when you're on the sideline, I'm almost appreciative of the fact that you're putting yourself out there, even though there's times when you're down and out, you're trying to will your team on. and it's almost a death by 1,000 cuts. But I know how grounded you are, and the strength that you have in your faith, Sam, and personally, I appreciate you as a friend.
Thank you, bro.
And I can only see you going forward and doing great things. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, bro.
Love you, man.
Love you too,
Thank you, bro.
Thanks for having me, bro.